This is the story of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth was born to a family of well-established actors in Maryland in 1838. Booth also grew up to become an established actor. Though less successful than his brother Edwin Booth, he gained minor roles in plays such as Shakespeare's Richard III and Julius Caesar. Because John Wilkes Booth grew up in the South, he was also a Confederate sympathizer and spoke out many times against the abolition of slavery and his hatred for President Abraham Lincoln. He believed that Lincoln was determined to overthrow the Constitution and destroy his beloved South. In November of 1864, Booth began planning an abduction of the president and gathered up a group of 6 conspirators, including David Harold, amongst others. On the day of the planned kidnapping, which was March 20th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln did not show at the intended place where the abduction was to occur. Since this abduction failed, Abraham Lincoln continued with his plans to abolish slavery, and the Civil War went on. Only a couple weeks later, on April 9th, the Confederacy fell to Union forces, and the infamous surrender was made official by General Robert E. Lee to Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse. At this point, Booth is angry and desperate to stop Lincoln's plans by any means necessary, so he devised his own plan to assassinate the president. On April 14th, 1865, Booth had learned that President Lincoln would be in attendance at the performance of Our American Cousin later that night at the Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Due to his status as an actor and having performed at the Ford's Theater in the past, Booth was able to gain easy access all around the theater. During the play, Booth was able to slip into the president's box, finding only Union officer Major Henry Rathbone as Lincoln's security. Booth shot Lincoln in the back of the head with a .44 caliber Derringer pistol. Booth grappled briefly with Rathbone before stabbing him in the shoulder and jumping out of the box onto the stage, where he broke his ankle and reportedly yelled, "Sic semper tyrannis," meaning "thus always to tyrants," or "death to all tyrants." After Booth's escape, Lincoln was carried off across the street to a boarding house, where he subsequently died a few hours later. Booth fled the capital on horseback to Maryland. This launched one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history, with 10,000 federal troops, detectives, and police tracking down John Wilkes Booth. Along the way, Booth met up with his accomplice, David Harold, and the two went down to southern Maryland before rowing a boat across the Potomac River to Virginia, where they hid out in a barn. Finally, on April 26th, just 12 days after the assassination, Union cavalry found where Harold and Booth were hiding and surrounded the barn and lit it on fire. David Harold ran outside and surrendered, but as his last act, Booth remained inside and was eventually shot in the neck while still inside the burning barn. Union troops carried Booth out of the barn, where he lay bleeding out for nearly 3 hours. John Wilkes Booth's last words were, "Useless, useless."